if you look at the college basketball playoff selection committee, it does factor in the last 10 games. It does factor in if you've got a player that's not going to participate because of injury or whatever else. It does factor that in. They're open and honest about that. As far as the stipulation for the college football playoff, the breakdowns are head-to-head. That's one of them. Conference champion will be given an edge. So that should it be who is playing the best on what's December 2nd, 3rd, on Saturday? Should it be who's playing the best on the 3rd, or should it be the body of work? Because if it's that's my question. To me, it should be the body of work because of the way football is different from basketball.
Yeah, I can see it both sides, but honestly, in Tennessee's a great example of this. If you see them lose Hendon Hooker, you're going to keep them out. And the reason being is because that was what brought, right or wrong, that was what brought the audience. Hendon Hooker, everyone loved Hendon Hooker. You know, everyone rooted for Hendon Hooker because Hendon Hooker is that guy. You know, you root for him. He doesn't have explicit written across his nails. You know,
Referring to Caleb Williams, yeah.
Yeah. He has
the F-bomb Notre Dame.
Yeah, that shit. I don't want to talk about nails and like football. I just feel like they don't mix very well. But anyway, you had Hendon Hooker, and I know we addressed this earlier. Like if Georgia lost a big, Stetson Bennett's not that big of a deal, but obviously he's the best one that they have. So if they lost Stetson Bennett with a college football playoff, take that in consideration. Should they? No. Would they? Yes. Because you're not getting the same team that you looked at and saw the whole season. If Caleb Williams went down with an injury right now, USC would be out of it. Completely out of it. CJ Stroud for Ohio State would be out of it. But according to ESPN, Ohio State still has like an 88% chance to make it. So that blowout win or loss against Michigan, they're not going to factor. At home, that's going to be out the window. I mean, honestly, that's what's going to happen is they're going to take Ohio State's complete body of work, even though it is crap. They're going to take that and they're going to put Ohio State in. So all of the, Twitter back and forth between Alabama and Tennessee going, Alabama should be in, Tennessee should be in. How can Alabama be ranked ahead of Tennessee? It's all null and void because they're putting Ohio State in there. And I think it's stupid and I hate it, but I think that's what's going to happen.
I actually think that Ohio State will be left out if things play out the way they should, and that'd be Southern California and TCU winning.
Yes, if they win out, then Ohio State would be left out. But if anybody thought that Tennessee or Alabama had a shot at it, like if USC loses to Utah again, or if TCU loses in the Big 12 championship, if anybody thought that Alabama or Tennessee had a shot, they don't. They're going to put Ohio State in there. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I don't think Ohio State deserves it. But I do believe that they will put Ohio State in there ahead of everybody else. So
I find this very interesting. Okay, so I have long said that I would go with a formula over a committee. And I was so disheartened when they said they had a playoff in place and they're going to go with a committee. I was just like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. But that's what they're going to do. So they're going to go with a committee. We've seen that for some time now. But I always thought a formula would be the best way. And I know the BCS early got ripped because it had margin of victory. That leads to running up the score. Take that out. Make it just – you can put together a committee to come together on a formula. But I think the reason is pretty obvious. They want to have that TV show because once we found out the formula, we could all do it ourselves on a Saturday night or Sunday morning. So I'm sure you know who number one in the BCS would be right now. If the BCS formula was in place, this is actually according to Saturday Down South. So Georgia would be number one, right?
I think Michigan would be number one.
Actually, Georgia's number one. Michigan would be number 2. Now, who do you think would be number 3? The old BCS formula.
USC?
The TCU would actually be number 3. And I think the reason is because people haven't looked at the Big 12 enough. That's a good conference from 1 to 8, which most conferences can't say. So I don't think it's a great conference. It may not have an elite team. We'll see what TCU does. It may. But they've got some good wins in their conference schedule. Number 4, which goes to your point. Do you want to guess who that would be?
I don't like guessing these things.
Ohio State would be number 4.
Yep.
Youch.
I know.
Over Southern Cal. Southern Cal has a loss, but they can still win a conference championship, which just wouldn't factor that in. And then Southern Cal didn't get hammered at home. That wasn't even a game.
I watched that game, the Southern Cal and was it Utah and Southern Cal. I actually watched that game at a bar when I was in Arizona. And it was a really crazy game. There's no defense at all, but it was actually a really good game. I was surprised because I wasn't expecting that from the Pac-12. But no, the BCS takes into account, the biggest thing they take into account is win and losses and who you lost to. All they're looking at is Ohio State lost to Michigan. Michigan's number 2 was number 3 in the nation. So that's what they're looking at. If you look at everything else, they've lost to, they lost to Michigan, and USC lost to Utah, and Tennessee's lost twice, and Alabama's lost twice. And that's how it is. Ohio State's 4.
But see, a 1-point loss to a ranked team in Utah is not even close to what Ohio State. And I guess the latest BCS, which again, this is based off the equation. This is not what they're going to go by, but the latest BCS took out margin of victory. So maybe that's a factor. But Ohio State, I guess because they lost a higher ranked team at the time, would be ahead of Southern Cal in at number 5. And then you get to the Tennessee-Alabama debate. So who do you think would be ranked higher in the old BCS?
The old BCS, as in the ones that took into account margin of victory, or did not take into account?
Did not. The initial ones did, like the first 4 years. I remember coaches like uncomfortable saying, well, they've done this to us. You have to put up style points. Yeah. Now it's more innate. You don't really know if that's happened or not. But where would you think Tennessee and Alabama in the old BCS would rank?
I think Alabama would be ahead.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And that surprised me when I saw it yesterday. So then Alabama would be over Tennessee at 6 and 7. And then it gets really quirky. You would have Penn State, Washington, Clemson, Kansas State, LSU, Utah. So I just be honest with you. I look at some of these numbers and they don't make any sense to me. I don't understand. Yeah. I go back to the head-to-head Tennessee, Alabama. I go back to the way that Michigan beat Ohio State and the way that ultimately, if you look at it, Southern Cal got beat by Utah. Those don't even seem comparable to me. So yeah, I don't know if strength of schedule, maybe up to 21 points needs to be in it. If we were to redo this thing, Amanda, what would you think? I'm going to pitch this idea to you, okay? You are now Mark Emmert, except way smarter, the head of the NCAA. Like, not even close, okay?
Okay.
Here's my idea. This committee thing is neat and good, and we get television ratings, but for the integrity of the game, I want you to do this. I want you to use the old BCS formula, and the margin of victory maxes out at 21 points. So there's no point in running up the score. That's what I'm doing. That's what I think would be best for the integrity of the sport. Mark LaFratta, what do you say?
Mark LaFratta. Ooh, that's honestly tough. There's no right answer.
You lose your TV show that you're making money off of, because anybody can get the formula and do it on Sunday morning. So you're losing the TV show.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it's been really close to BCS. Like they do the BCS rankings, and the playoff has almost hit it every single year. So maybe there is really, that's all they're going on at the end of the season, and the TV show is just here to get viewership. I mean, it seems like that's a plausible thought there. I mean, I think you're right, but people are always going to have an argument, for a team or a school, and there's always going to be you're biased towards this team or you're biased towards that team. I mean, nobody's ever, I think what really, really hurt Tennessee was that loss to South Carolina, and not just losing to South Carolina, but how they lost to South Carolina. If they didn't lose to South Carolina, I think we'd be having a completely different situation, in which I could argue that Tennessee deserves to be in there. But that loss to South Carolina is really, I think that took out Tennessee's hopes.
Yeah, I think if you're Tennessee, you're definitely in without the loss to South Carolina. I think you're rooting for Georgia to lose for, it's not a home game, but kind of home field advantage to be able to play in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which is one of the semifinal games. So I think that's what you're hoping for. But, again, the loss to South Carolina is what it is. I mean, it was bad, and it wasn't a fluky game at all. You can't point to it and say that, Tennessee turned the ball over 5 times, it was slippery, whatever. There's just a lot of ways it's very difficult to say to yourself that Tennessee deserves a big shot. And that's why I put it at 5%. Arthur said we need to be realistic and honest. I think, thank you. Dave had some strong points. The Tennessee team has a 5% or less chance to sneak in the college football playoff. The best thing for Tennessee scenario, TCU and USC loss. Joe says Hendon being out hurts us too. It does. It reminds me of the John Higgins situation. He was a point guard for Tennessee, and Tennessee was the 65th team on the board. 64 make the tournament. So the Vols did not make the tournament, and part of that was John Higgins. And if you lose a star player of that ilk, it will affect you. So
absolutely. And especially without, them going off of the BCS formula, if they're getting away from that, and it's a committee that is looking at all aspects of it, losing your star player, that's going to boot you immediately. I mean, unless you are just dominant everywhere else and you lose them at the very end, but you've won everything. If you lose that guy, they're going to kick you out of the college football playoff, and solely because of TV rankings.
Yep, I agree. Right or wrong. I mean, that's a factor. And we are going to visit with Chris Landry, get his thoughts on the weekend, and portions of the program brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Andy and his crew have over 40 years of experience in real estate in Knoxville, and they've got 2 business principles that they work by. Number 1 is the best service. Number 2, the best prices. You can win with that, and you will win in the real estate business. Don't make some sort of mistake that's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. Go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com. I also have been fortunate enough to undergo my LASIK procedure. I can see clearly up close, far away. It's fantastic, and it's brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. My vision is brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. And I certainly want to thank those fine fellows for taking